we get started, I do want to say that this is going to be the beginning of a new series that I plan on doing, which is kind of like truth bombs and debunking myths and common crap that I hear out there. And they'll be really short and to the point, not clickbait. So if you're interested in that kind of video, make sure you comment below and give me, some tips or questions that you might have that I could address. Or I would also recommend that you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to be notified so that you will know when I post one of these quick and to the point truth bomb videos. So now let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to talk about why I personally quit keto, but I'm also going to go over some common mistakes at the end of this video. So make sure you stay tuned to the end, especially if you are currently following a ketogenic diet, because you're going to want to hear these. All right, guys. So the number one reason was I wasn't losing weight unless I tracked anyhow. And initially, when I started the ketogenic diet, I was turned on to it by the thought that as long as you didn't eat carbohydrates, you can kind of eat as much as you want. And I quickly figured out years ago that that was not correct. And as I began to do my own studying for my nutritionist certification, I learned about so many different macronutrient profiles that I decided to try different macronutrient profiles. And ultimately, you want to land on what's most sustainable for you and makes you feel less deprived, because at the end of the day, as long as you maintain a caloric deficit, your macronutrient breakdown can be many different things. So you have to just pick what's going to work for you. So as I was trying to test different macronutrient profiles, I landed on what I felt was most sustainable for me, which is lately kind of low to moderate carbohydrate, high protein, always high protein for me. Even when I was on the ketogenic diet, I quickly realized that I was having a really hard time building muscle because the standard ketogenic macros did not allow for a lot of protein at only like 20 to 25% protein. And that just was not enough for me to build strong muscles. So, but I did have success on keto, putting on muscle when I bumped up that protein significantly. But still, I was still unable to incorporate all of the balance that I wanted. And I just found that when I tried out low to moderate carb macros, I was much more satisfied. And I just felt overall like I was able to live a more balanced lifestyle. And it was much easier for me to adhere to. Remember, at the end of the day, that is the most important thing. What is going to be the easiest for you in terms of adhering to it consistently, because consistency is what's going to get you the results. Another thing with keto that kind of became a turnoff for me is I felt like you couldn't even have a little bit of something without freaking out that you were going to be kicked out of ketosis. And so I feel like it perpetuated an unhealthy relationship with food, at least for me, because the key really is to be able to have balance and feel like you can have a little bit of something without going crazy. And with keto, I didn't feel like that was possible. So let me give you an example. Under the moderate carb macros, if I'm at a restaurant and they serve a basket of bread, I could easily incorporate a piece of bread into my macros and still be completely on point. On the ketogenic diet, you immediately feel like the minute you have a couple of French fries off your spouse's plate or a piece of bread, you panic at the thought of being kicked out of ketosis. I felt like, for me at least, it was perpetuating a potentially unhealthy relationship with food. Also, a phobia to carbohydrates. And honestly, carbohydrates are not the devil, okay? They are an alternate energy source. Fats and carbs are energy. And I think that carbs have just ultimately been given a bad name. I also found that with keto, it was a little more difficult to control my caloric intake, because if you're avoiding carbohydrates, which means you're replacing carbohydrates with fats have more than double the amount of calories. So I found that those calories added up very, very quickly, making it a lot more difficult to stay within that caloric deficit. So, I guess I have to say for me, it was just developing more knowledge of other macronutrient profiles and how you can be so successful at any of them, as long as you can and stick to it and track your macros and get your protein in, get your exercise in. So for me, it was really important to identify what I felt like I was missing out on and make sure that I was eating a macronutrient breakdown that I could accommodate all of those things. So I knew that I was starting to feel deprived, which is not a good feeling when you are trying to eat in a deficit, because that's what makes you fall off the handle. When things that were not that spectacular sounded like amazing to me. Like I wanted to bury my head in a bowl of rice, or, I wanted to eat all the fruit, all the bananas, like things that normally like didn't sound that exciting to me. Suddenly I felt so deprived because I wasn't allowed to have some rice or a piece of bread or things like that. So that is why I personally selected something that's more sustainable for me. You really need to look at what you feel like is going to be sustainable for you in terms of your relationship with food, the foods you like to eat, how good you are with tracking macros and things like that. So it really is an individualized decision. Also important to realize that just because you decide to do keto for a while doesn't mean you can't change that. It's not a club. You can quit. You can go back and forth. You don't have to, you're not cheating on anything if you try something new. So it's important to keep that in mind. Ultimately, you have to do what is going to be best for you, sustainable for you. And then when it stops working or it becomes difficult, it's okay to switch things up. So don't feel like you're married to it. It's not a divorce. You can easily try something new and see how that works for you as well. So now let me just cover some of the biggest keto mistakes that I see people make. Listen, I still am a very big specialist when it comes to ketogenic diet. I know a lot about it. I would say 50% of my clients select keto as their macronutrient breakdown. Typically, they'll shift away from keto after some time and go into like a low carb, but low carb and keto are the most common macronutrient breakdowns that I work with, although I do all of them. So I'm still very well versed in some of the common mistakes. So let's discuss. Okay, the very biggest mistake is when people think that you can eat as much fat as you want and you don't have to track macros. Or it doesn't matter if you are eliminating carbs completely. If you are not creating a caloric deficit, you're not going to lose fat. And in order to really figure out how much you're eating and whether you're in a deficit or not, it really does require tracking. So one of the biggest mistakes I hear is, I heard a lot of people early on, keto coaches and all kinds of different nutrition specialists alike say that calories didn't matter, that as long as you didn't eat carbohydrates, you could eat as much as you want, and that there's no such thing as calories in, calories out. I'm here to tell you that is false. It is scientific. If you consume more calories, it does not matter what it is. If you consume more energy than your body needs, it stores the excess. Excess storage is fat. That's what it is. Fat on our bodies is stored energy. In order to use that stored energy, you have to consume less than your body needs and force it to dip into that. So that is the number one mistake. Number two is having this false sense of security that the fact that you're in ketosis means that you are burning fat. It does not mean that. It just means you're using ketones for energy and not carbohydrates. If you are not in a deficit, you are not burning stored body fat as fuel. The presence of ketones, when you test your, on the ketone monitor, does not mean that you are losing weight, losing fat. You have to maintain that caloric deficit. I feel like people have this obsession or become unusually obsessed with being in ketosis, and it leads them to actually consume a lot of calories. So for example, they'll be taking spoonfuls of MCT oil or exogenous ketones or spending a lot of money on like ketone drinks just so that they can see that number on their little monitor, because it makes them feel like they're burning stored body fat. You are not burning stored body fat as fuel unless your body has to. Your body will only dip into stored body fat if you are consuming less than it needs in order to function. I don't make this stuff up, you guys. It's science. Another mistake people make is they rely on keeping it keto. I can't tell you how much this makes me cringe when my clients will say, like, don't worry, I went a little off handle this weekend. I ate a little too much, but I kept it keto. Keeping it keto means nothing. If you ate at a surplus and you consumed too many calories, even if it was all from fats, you're going to put on weight. And I think that false sense of security by avoiding the carbs will inadvertently lead you to consuming a lot more calories because you feel safe because you're keeping it keto. And like I said before, Fats have twice the amount of calories per gram than carbs. So it's very, very easy to quickly add up those calories and get yourself into a surplus. So keeping it keto is not a good idea. Not consuming enough protein. This is another one, especially if muscle gains is important to you, as it should be, you guys, because putting on lean muscle is ultimately what's going to make the weight loss stick and stay off, because the more lean muscle you have, the higher your metabolism is and faster your metabolism is, which means it's much easier to eat at a caloric deficit because your body requires more energy in order to function. The more muscle you have, more energy your body needs in order to function. Now, that being said, a lot of people on the standard ketogenic macros are not really consuming a lot of protein, or they're not prioritizing protein. And protein actually also increases your thermic effect of food, meaning it takes more energy for your body to digest it. So automatically, it is also going to help create and maintain a deficit by consuming more protein. But people that are using the standard ketogenic macros are traditionally not consuming enough protein. I could honestly go on and on with all the different kinds of things, but this is going to be my last one for this video, and that is consuming too much processed foods. Unfortunately, since keto became mainstream, all of the companies jumped on the bandwagon and have created everything under the sun package and put the keto label on it. And again, people have this false sense of security the minute they see something has the label keto on it, and they think that this is going to be great and this is, going to help them stay in ketosis and lose weight. And ultimately, it's just not the case. At the end of the day, the more whole foods you eat, the better. And try not to fall victim to eating all of these packaged foods just because they say keto on there. A lot of times they're filled with, artificial sugar and fillers and all kinds of things that are undesirable, that are, not going to help you reach those goals. So that's another common mistake when it comes to the ketogenic diet. Again, you guys, I'm not here to bash the ketogenic diet. I think that it could be very successful for you. It can help with a lot of metabolic conditions. And if you have like metabolic syndrome or insulin resistance, there are so many things that can be beneficial for, but if it is done correctly, not just simply eating plates of bacon and sticks of butter and sticking your finger to make sure those ketones look really high and just thinking you're all good, because it's not that simple. If you need my help, I'm definitely a specialist in the ketogenic diet, as well as all other different macronutrient profiles. I'll put my link in the description box. I do coaching and things like that. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.